people in charge are taking the easy way out. Your response?
Well, I'm glad Mr. Obama has a new job as Joe Biden's press secretary. I note for the record that in his speech that I read, there was no mention of manufacturing, no mention of China. As far as I'm concerned, his administration was a kumbaya of incompetence in which we saw millions of manufacturing jobs go off to China. His new normal was a flat line in terms of wage growth. And I'm happy to report that this president, Donald J. Trump, in 3.5 years, built the most beautiful economy in modern history. And the Chinese did take that down in about 30 days, but we are in the process right now of rebuilding that. And this president, Donald J. Trump, is the one who has the skills to do so. Because you know what, George, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the future here. Buy American, deregulate, and innovate. What do I mean by
Amen.
that? Bring the jobs home, make it here.
You say the Chinese took down the American economy, so you're saying they deliberately unleashed the COVID virus on the United States? Do you have any evidence for that?
I did not say they deliberately did it, but their China virus, let's go over the facts here. Correct me if I'm wrong. The virus was spawned in Wuhan province. Patient zero was in November. The Chinese, behind the shield of the World Health Organization, for 2 months hid the virus from the world and then sent hundreds of thousands of Chinese on aircraft to Milan, New York, and around the world to seed that. They could have kept it in Wuhan.
Absolutely.
Instead, it became a pandemic. So that's why I say the Chinese did that to Americans, and they are responsible. Now, George, one other thing that I think is unconscionable about the Chinese behavior, as we speak, they signed a trade deal on January 15th, and they promised not to steal our intellectual property. Big part of that deal. Guess what? The FBI has now issued warnings that the Chinese government is hacking the intellectual property so that they can steal vaccines for the world. And what would they do with it? It wouldn't be a benign experience. They'd use that vaccine to profiteer and hold the world hostage. So yes, I do blame the Chinese. And it'd be really interesting, George, as to how this election unfolds, because you've got Joe Biden, who's been a long friend of China, versus President Trump, who's the only president who's ever stood up to China.
Let's pick up on that, because on Thursday, Vice President Biden spoke out on this and took on President Trump directly. Let's listen.
The truth is, Trump was praising the Chinese government, downplaying the threat to the American people. And as I said, as I was warning the need to get the people into China to see what was actually going on.
Oh, Biden, you and your son were over there ripping off America with $1 billion of corruption.
And now he's trying to play this China card.
The Vice President had an op-ed in USA Today in January. He warned in February. All through the month of February, President Trump was praising President Xi of China. He was saying he trusts President Xi of China. He was saying President Xi of China was being transparent. That's why Vice President Biden says that the president was downplaying the threat from China.
Yeah, well, Joe Biden's got 40 years of sucking up to the Chinese, including 8 years as vice president. We all know about the $1 billion that his son took from the Chinese.
Absolutely.
That's just not factual, sir. That is not a fact. He did not take $1 billion from the Chinese.
Went into that hedge fund. But be that as it may, I do think this election is going to be a referendum in many ways on China. And here's what we know, George.
We know George is pro-Democrat.
Poll would show that over 90% of the American public think that China is a threat in some way, and over 70% have an unfavorable opinion. In my judgment, the behavior of the Chinese Communist Party over the last 3 months, particularly in terms of unleashing this pandemic, I think they're shooting for 100% negative views. So we'll have Joe Biden, long friend of China, President Donald J. Trump, the only president in modern history to stand up to China, going into November, and it's what this is going to be about. It's not going to be about the pandemic. It's going to be about jobs, because
but you keep talking about
build the economy.
Listen, we're going to talk about the economy. You keep talking about China, though, but all during the month of February, as I said, the president was continuing to praise China, was continuing to praise President Xi of China. He was trying to work out that trade deal with China, wanted to preserve that, wanted to preserve the gains in the stock market. It was President Trump who was praising China all through the month of February. And
lies, George. He's negotiating.
Those lost weeks weeks made a difference?
So, first of all, I think it's great that we have a president who can get along with all the world leaders. So that's number one. But number two, there's no lost weeks. This starting gun for the China pandemic started on January 30th when President Trump had the courage to pull down the flights from China. That was an enormously courageous decision. He took a lot of heat from that. And from that day, and I was personally involved in a lot of this, we were moving on 3 vectors of attack in February: vaccine development, development of therapeutics like remdesivir, and the building up of capacity for things like N95 masks. And the work we did throughout February has borne beautiful fruit here in this spring.
Absolutely.
What we saw on Friday in the Rose Garden was the announcement of a 14-company race to a vaccine with the goal of December. What we've seen is therapeutics like remdesivir already going into hospitals right now to save American lives. And we had a company like Honeywell building 2 factories in 5 weeks, George, instead of 9 months. 5 weeks, that's Trump time, to produce 20 million N95 masks a month. So don't tell me that we lost February, because I was there. I'm right here, and this president was directing us to move as quickly as possible, even as publicly we were trying to figure out in the fog of war just how serious this pandemic is.
You know, you mentioned what was going on in the month of February, and it is true, according to all accounts, you were working quite hard during the month of February, including the accounts of that whistleblower. Richard Bright talks about several meetings with you during the month of February on all the issues you just mentioned. He said you and he were allies in this, trying to break through roadblocks that were coming from HHS and other parts of the government, yet now you call him a deserter in the war against the virus. Why?
Let's be clear about this. I report directly to the president. I'm one of the top 5 policy advisors to the president. So everything I was doing with the help of Rick Bright and others during February was the White House, was the Trump White House. It was all transparent with the task force. Here's what happened with Rick Bright. And it's an American tragedy, George. This guy is quite talented, but he was asked to be the field commander over at NIH to storm the testing hill with $1 billion behind him. Instead of accepting that mission, he deserted. He went into a foxhole, wrote up the complaint, and now he's part of a Capitol Hill partisan circus where he's just become another pawn in the game. And the
Absolutely.
This man has talent. He's a smart man. We could have used him on the battlefield. He's not there now, and it was because of decisions that he made. And it is a shame, George. It is a shame.
His expertise is vaccines. He wants to work in vaccine development. They're putting him in diagnostic testing. Why shouldn't a vaccine expert be working on vaccines?
See, here's the thing, George. I've been with the president since the campaign, right? I came here to do trade policy, right? What am I now, a conscript in the war on the China virus? I'm like a quartermaster and a shipping clerk half the time. Do I complain? No, that's my mission for this president, for this country. We do what we have to do when we have to do it for this country. And Rick Bright, he made a choice. He could have been making a tremendous contribution over at NIH to testing, and you and others have been complaining about testing. He could have been the field general, and now he's off the battlefield, and it was by his own choice, sir.
Let's talk about the economic response. We saw some tough numbers at the end of the week on jobs, on manufacturing, on retail sales. The House passed that $3 trillion, the next stimulus package, on Friday. Is that a basis for negotiation? Is the president prepared to sign another relief package?
So Nancy Pelosi basically lost me with that package when she has $1,200 checks for illegal immigrants, and it just goes downhill from there. What we have to do, George, is basically go with the fiscal and monetary stimulus that we've been going through. We've got a lot coursing through the system now. We may need more, and I'm going to let others above my pay grade negotiate that. What I'm
Chairman Powell says we do need more.
Well, what I'm focused on, George, and this is the real key to success, is going to be the structural adjustments we're going to have to make. For every service sector job we might lose as we adjust to this China virus, we're going to have to replace that with manufacturing jobs, which do have a high multiplier in terms of creating service sector jobs again. So what I'm focused on with President Trump is a Buy American, Deregulate, Innovate agenda, which will start with bringing our pharma supply chains home, bringing our medical supplies and equipment
Amen.
supply chains home. So we build
Should have been done years ago.
both good economics, but also good national security. And from there, we're going to fan out. And basically, this president going back
Thanks
to
to
him as a
Trump,
candidate promised
Pence
to bring
team.
our jobs home. That's going to be key to the future with innovation. Innovation really is going to be the key. The General Motors plant for ventilators went up in 17 days in Kokomo, Indiana, through innovation. They not only assembled that factory in 17 days, they took 700 components of the supply chain to make up a ventilator, used their manufacturing might to replicate that in tool and die makers throughout that supply chain. That was a miracle, George. And we can replicate that throughout this economy, repurposing our factories. This is the jobs president, the innovation president, the manufacturing president, and this is how we're going to get through the other end of this crisis here.